What is going on, guys? In this video I'm going to talk about the 3 mechanisms of hypertrophy and how you can use them to maximize your training. But hold on, let me preface by saying this topic is aimed at intermediate to advanced lifters who really want to maximize their gains in the gym. If you're a beginner or an average gym goer, this isn't critical information, but may still be something you're interested in. The mechanisms of muscle hypertrophy were originally investigated by Brad Schoenfeld and published in a 2010 paper. His review outlined 3 potential mechanisms that may be involved in muscle hypertrophy. However, there's still so much we don't know about this topic today. The 3 potential mechanisms are mechanical tension, metabolic stress, and muscle damage. Since the 2010 paper, Schoenfeld says that mechanical tension is evidently the primary driver of muscle hypertrophy, and other factors such as metabolic stress and muscle damage may be involved. But in my opinion, understanding all 3 mechanisms may provide some useful takeaway points that you can apply to your training in the gym, if you aren't doing so already. The first mechanism, and the primary driver of muscle hypertrophy, is mechanical tension. Mechanical tension is the force placed on a muscle using a heavy load. So basically just lift as heavy as you can for 1 rep, call it a day, and get jacked. Not quite, there's a catch. Skeletal muscle is sensitive to the time tension integral. The gym bro term for this is time under tension. So essentially what's most important is the time that the muscle exists under tension within a given set, session, or training period. But we can't forget 2 important rules. Number 1, having control of the weight, and number 2, using a full range of motion. The takeaway point is, lifting heavy weight in a controlled manner through a full range of motion is the most important driver of muscle growth. Without mechanical tension, hypertrophy is very limited. But how do we know how far to take the set? Here's my first bonus tip. You need to train relatively close to failure. What does this mean? This means to optimize muscle hypertrophy, you need to train hard, relatively close to failure, and taking some sets to failure may be beneficial as well. A good way to grade this is through the RPE scale, or the rate of perceived exertion scale. For my main exercises in a workout, I personally train with one of 2 methods. The first method is I work up to one all-out set of complete failure, achieving RPE 10. The sets leading up to the top set are used as a warm-up. The second method starts off the same as method 1, then we pyramid back down in weight for another 2 to 4 sets for some additional volume. The method I choose depends on what exercise I'm performing and how much volume I'm trying to perform on a given exercise. For example, taking a multi-joint movement like a squat to failure is different to taking leg extensions to failure. By training this way, I'm ensuring that 3 things occur: getting an effective warm-up, taking at least 1 to 2 sets per exercise to failure, and training relatively close to failure with an RPE of 7 to 9 for my other sets. This is my way of maximizing mechanical tension. Does this mean this is the best way to train? No, this is simply what works for me. How we respond to a specific training style is also influenced by genetics, stress, nutrition, recovery, and many other factors. Structuring your training should also largely be based on what works for you as an individual through trial and error. The second mechanism is metabolic stress. Metabolic stress is the production and buildup of metabolites such as lactate and hydrogen ions in response to training. These metabolites may affect hypertrophy in skeletal muscle. Metabolic stress may also lead to more sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, the fluid-like component of muscle cells. I'm sure most of us have experienced the burn or the pump with higher rep sets and shorter rest periods. If you haven't, what the hell are you doing? Sets performed this way maximize cellular swelling and cause some degree of hypoxia, lack of oxygenated blood to the muscle. This results in metabolic stress. As I've hinted at already, metabolic stress is maximized with higher rep training. Other techniques that can be used to maximize metabolic stress are shorter rest periods and drop sets. The evidence for drop sets isn't very strong, but I still use them sparingly in my training. So to summarize, to maximize metabolic stress, we should train in higher rep ranges and utilize other variables such as drop sets, and shorter rest periods. So does this mean we should always train in higher rep ranges? This brings me on to my second bonus tip: train with a variety of different rep ranges. The majority of my training occurs in 3 rep ranges: 6 to 8 reps, 8 to 12 reps, and 12 to 20 reps. Training below 6 reps is more strength focused, and training above 20 reps generally has diminishing returns, with a few exceptions such as seated calf raises. For my main and most difficult exercises, I like to train in the 6 to 12 rep range. For isolation exercises such as leg extensions or machine loaded bicep curls, I like to train in the 12 to 20 rep range. Again, this is what works for me. What works for you may be different, and something worth experimenting with. The final mechanism is muscle damage. Muscle damage, like its name suggests, involves structural damage to the muscle tissue through micro tears in the muscle fibers and other surrounding components. Both concentric and eccentric contractions cause muscle damage. However, eccentric muscle contractions or negatives performed at longer muscle lengths cause more muscle damage. You're also stronger in the eccentric portion of a movement. Most people miss out on any potential benefit because they focus only on the concentric portion of the movement. And generally speaking, if you train, you will get some degree of muscle damage. This is why, depending on your training frequency, higher levels of muscle damage may be counterproductive if you're unable to recover between sessions. Generally, being sore or delayed onset muscle soreness, DOMS, that occurs 1 to maybe even 3 days after you train is indicative of muscle damage. But this doesn't mean if you're not sore, you're not making any gains. Personally, I think it's beneficial to aim for some degree of muscle damage. At least on a psychological level, you know that you've done something in your workout. To summarize, both concentric and eccentric contractions cause muscle damage, but training the eccentric portion of a movement may cause more muscle damage. My final bonus tip is utilize the mind-muscle connection. The mind-muscle connection is simply focusing on the target muscle you're working. It's a deliberate and conscious contraction of a specific muscle group. For example, when performing the dumbbell bench press, having a strong mind-muscle connection with the pecs can reduce activation of the delts and triceps in the movement. The mind-muscle connection is something that takes a while to really master, and it's different for every muscle group. Should you train with a mind-muscle connection on every exercise? Well, that's up to debate. The short answer is no. I utilize it on most of my exercises, but not all of them. It depends on what my goal for that exercise or set is. Another point to note is that if you're powerlifting, a mind-muscle connection shouldn't be the focus. Developing a good mind-muscle connection is specific to bodybuilding training and something that can definitely maximize your gains. Let's summarize this video into key takeaway points we can use in the gym. Lift heavy weights in a controlled manner through a full range of motion. Now remember, heavy is relative to your current strength level. Incorporate higher rep sets with or without shorter rest periods and drop sets. Train the eccentric portion of a movement as well. Train relatively close to failure. Train with a variety of different rep ranges. Use a mind-muscle connection when training. Not all of these concepts need to be used in combination, but understanding them and utilizing them across your workouts will maximize your muscle building potential long term. Now, these tips aren't the holy grail, but they're definitely some good tips to use when training in the gym. As a final point, guys, research should only be used as a guide when it comes to training in the gym. Understanding what works for you, going through trial and error, and gaining practical experience is just as important. But if you're looking for that extra edge in your training, then hopefully this video was useful to you. If it was, make sure to leave a like for the YouTube algorithm, subscribe to see more videos like this, and I'll see you guys again soon.